So, hello all. Today we'll be talking about reservation policy and how has been the reservation policy. How did we come up with this reservation policy in general? So, let us understand what it is about. So, first one, what what is the main purpose of reservation policy? You should be knowing it, right? Like what has been its main purpose. So its main purpose is to mobilize or uplift the downtrodden or suppress or vulnerable classes. So the main agenda is to have a special priority basis equality or priority laws that could uplift them and make them equal with the other sections of the society who have not been oppressed all along the development, historical development. So to compensate, in order to compensate for their atrocities that has been um, taken by them or put over them. So to compensate those atrocities and discrimination over ethnicity, gender, and geography. So this reservation concept in United States, it is known as affirmative policy. So this affirmative policy in United Nations, it's a positive action, like states showing interest in giving extra little care to the needy, to the uh, di- discriminated people. So in India, we call it policy of reservation. So we reserve some seats, we reserve some things for the people that have underwent this suppression or have been what do we call been a victim of atrocities. Okay. So its aim is to bring socially excluded classes into the mainstream and give them an equal platform to compete with the all other groups who have not been discriminated. So the Constitution of India, it has been imbibed or made as a part of Constitution of India to protect the SC, ST, and weaker sections from injustices in all forms of exploitation. So this is not just related to political or not just social or economy, but in every sphere and in every forms that the exploitation must be stopped at any cost in SC, ST, and weaker sections. So this is what reservation policy is actually meant to do. Then reservations, there has been reservation and reservation issues in pre-independent India also. So if you look at the debates or the actual events that has been considered are we'll be reading now. So in let us talk about ancient India, like how has been the reservations in ancient India. So in ancient India, origin has its roots, this roots of untouchability or caste system or varna system has its roots in ancient India from the ancient civilizations or the Vedic age or the later Vedic age. You might have all known this by now. So it's not something that has come recent times or it's just an 18th century thing or anything, but it has been there since the primitive societies have come into picture. So this practice of untouchability, caste system and varna system has been existing. Now what? Hindu society was divided on the basis of Varna. We call it Varna system. So this Varna system does what? It doesn't hierarchical triangle or the cycle where the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. One, two, three, four. This four-step process where Sudras has been kept at the bottom line. If we talk about Ambedkar here, so Ambedkar interestingly says he comes up with some different theory. He said the Sudras have not been the originally have not been a part of this Varna system. They are not the fourth uh, Varna or the fourth section that has been existing since the old ages, since the ancient ages. But he rather says, due to the oppression, this Sudras of the fourth Varna have been the what do we call a tribal community. They do not even belong to this Varna system. So, but over a period with suppression of the Brahmins, they have come under this hierarchical Varna cycle. So, his theory says this original Varna system of four strategies, four strata is not true, but the Sudras have been oppressed, indiscriminated by the Brahmins and were later added to this Varna system. So that's the interesting theory that Ambedkar comes up with. And untouchables are considered to be impure for the society, and they were excluded from the social system. They were excluded from the social events. They were not allowed to live in the communities of the other classes. They were kind of excluded from the normal original communities in the place or the state, and they had their own, the extra or the abandoned or the outside communities. Okay. So reside outside of the village. They have no social rights. If they violated any social norms, they were severely punished. Example, community gatherings or temple entry or use of wells for drinking water or social dining. They were not allowed in all these events. They were socially excluded, boycotted. But by mistake or by if someone rebel against also, they were severely punished so that the others would not dare to not follow these social norms. So this has been existing since the ancient age. Then division of society on the norms of purity, impurity had adverse effects. So this purity, impurity, caste, impure caste, pure varna, impure varna has led to the development of society, but irregular. This balance has been lost and merely recognized on the ground of him or him being a member of the lower caste. Okay, example, these stances can be traced back to Mahabharata. So what happens in Mahabharata? Warrior like Karna was not allowed to showcase his talent because him being a son of Sutaputra, like chariot son. So, as he's not allowed to take part in the Kshatriya's programs or Kshatriya's statement, artsmanship, he was criticized and he was not allowed. Then caste system was a major reason for advent and advancement of reservation policy. So with adverse caste system and Varna system been existing in the society, so this reservation policy's main agenda was to uplift the downtrodden. So to bring development in the lower strata, reservation policy in India was adopted. So now colonial India also been fighting for reservation. We can see it in particular cases or reforms. So in 1836, educational institutions in India began to set up by state consequent to the official declaration of English as a official state language. In 1856, untouchable boy, this is an incident. So what happens is that boy took admission in an educational institution in Dharwad. Then this led to the protest for the caste-ridden local boy to be taking an admission. And this forced the colonial rule to formulate a definite policy. So even the colonial powers were also being following or abiding by the social norms around caste system. So educational reform preceded the reservation policy and leadership in this respect was provided by various social reforms. So these social reforms has specially underwent in Madras, Mysore, Travancore, and Cochin. So this incidents and the even the colonial administration has been making reforms based on the caste system. So this reservation policies have now become an issue or main agenda of the government to make or frame laws. So the now old princely state of Mysore, it did what? In 1874, imagine. In 1874, it introduced reservation of jobs where 20% was reserved for lower and middle level posts in police for Brahmins, and remaining 80% it was reserved for non-Brahmins, Hindus, Muslims, and Indian citizens. So Indian Christians. So also the old Mysore policy of reservation in education institutions was put into practice in early 20th century. So imagine 20th century, the reservation policy has been following a reservation of seats in employment, reservation of posts in employment. So then 1919, this has to be Montagu Chelmsford Report of 1918. recognized the claims of separation of representation only for sinks. So this led to the separate representation of electoral representation. So this representation was only available to the six. Then a franchisee committee in 1918-1919 recommended nomination of members of depressed classes. So to each provincial assembly. So in order to have this upliftment or look into the social well-being, so the depressed members were also been recommended to the nomination of each assembly, provisional assembly. Then next act, 1919. So 1919 is the first statute of British government which provided representation for depressed classes in legislative bodies. So, who are these depressed classes? Muslims, Sikhs, Indian Christians, and Anglo Indians and Adivasis. So, these people have been provided representation in legislative bodies. Please do remember Government of India 1999. Then, reservation and elected bodies began with the passage of Government of India Act 1919, probably, yeah. And Government of India Act 1935 further consolidated the policy of communal representation in electoral bodies. So now what led to 1935 and 1919 in between was 1932 Communal Award. So this is called Ramsay MacDonald Communal Award. This has been an outcry during this thing for separate electorate for depressed classes, Sikhs and Muslims. So what happened in this? This communal award was given to separate category that Harijans from the mainstream. So it divided the untouchables or the depressed classes from the mainstream, and they were given separate communal award, separate reservation. So, but this was opposed by Gandhi. So, what happened in jail only? He went fast on to death. So, he started his fasting, an instrument of blackmailing. So, this was from the text itself. I'm not making up words. So, the text says that Gandhi blackmailed Ambedkar onto accepting or rejecting the communal award, and then they made a pact called Pune Pact. So this Pune Pact is first and second table conference held in London. So B.R. Ambedkar demanded British India government on separate electorates for untouchables. So this was opposed by Gandhi. So the conference was held around like 30s or something. So this was there he proposed that separate electorate shall be made for the untouchables. And Gandhi opposed it. So now what happens? Ramsay MacDonald agreed for the proposal of Ambedkar's communal award thing. But Gandhi says that the Harijans are not different from the Hindu community or the Indian society. But Ambedkar argued that untouchables are not Hindus, they are outcasts. See, in general, they are seen as outcast people only. No, they have to live outside of the village and they have to follow the social norms of untouchability. So, but there they are called outcasts, but what purpose they would be called uh, of the people belonging to the Hindu community. So they also must be given separate electorate. But Gandhi did not allow. He went past. Then Ambedkar was convinced by various other leaders. So Ambedkar settled down and the pact allotted seats in the provincial and central legislative. So this is called Ramsay MacDonald Communal Award. So now there have been various commissions for the reservations. So why these commissions have been set up? Because see, how do I know that what have been their issues or how much percentage of them they were living in the society, or how do I know what are their focus the issues. So the committees have been established to look into the issues that this depressed classes, backward classes, or the weaker sections have been going on and come up with a report. So now what happens for this committee was Kaka Kalelkar Committee, 1953. This is first backward class commission. So this was established through Article 340 of Indian Constitution in 1953. So now what did this committee recommend? So it committee recommended things were too vague, it seems, like too vague and too wide to be much of practical value. So the committee recommendations were not that practical, or they were addressing too many issues at two times. So government thought that it's not feasible to be following or going by the recommendations of the committee. So now what it says is this 54% of Indian population are backward classes, and they are composed into a list of 2,399 castes and communities. So 54% of the Indian population belongs to backward class, with subdivisions of 2,399 castes among them. Then center finally decided in 1961 not to drop any list for OBCs and advised state to draw their own list using economic rather than caste criteria. Okay, so looking into the survey issues, the society divided on the basis of economy, the economic background, shall be divided by the state itself. So center is not going to propose any caste-based survey, which has not happened till date. So there has been proposals to do caste-based survey. So the reservation count or reservation number could be looked into again. Now, center has finally decided in 1961 not to drop. So, and government of Bihar, meanwhile, so as the center said that the states can make their own list through the things that are available at their hand. So the government of Bihar introduced the policy of job reservation, 128 backward caste communities. So now states have started to do their own policy reservations. Then eight states made reservations for backward classes. Now what are these eight states? Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Jammu and Kashmir, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Uttar Pradesh. So these eight states, as center has given them permission to make their own list or come up with their own list. So these eight states have come up with their reservation for the backward classes. So now Mandal Commission. So now this Mandal Commission is first ever commission. Uh, it also be recognized because it is first ever non-Congress government commission. So this 1978 appointed the second backward class commission. So under the chairperson of Bindeshwari Prasad Mandal, Mandal Commission, you might have all known by now. So there is equality. This calls for a tagline that there has to be an equality among the equals. This tagline, you should find it similar of Aristotle, treating equals equally and unequals unequally. So commission submitted its report in 1980, and it says that the backward classes is both social educational, and stated that caste is a mirror class in India. So this is not just coming to the class or caste, but rather a social and educational issue that's been happening in India. So the methodology was followed. So if doing any survey, there has to be a methodology that has to be followed. So now what methodology does this Mandal Commission followed is first the commission, because this has been approved because this has been more detailed than the Kaka Kalelkar Commission, which were just vague and giving up random things or focusing on too many things. Now this happened what? Individual state commissions. This was better methodology than the first commission, and also the individual state commissions of backward classes of what? Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Jammu, Kashmir, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Uttar Pradesh. Now what happens? It came up with an indicators. So now what did this the indication indicators come up? So commission adopted 11 criteria, 11-point criteria to determine the backwardness. So in order to determine that whether in on which pointer in the scale you stay, you have to follow certain criteria, right? You will be given marks. Then only you will be said that you got above average, below average, or you did a distinction, or A plus, A grade, B plus, like that. Similarly, the caste backwardness also was measured with this 11-point criteria. So what is this 11-point criteria? In that, 4 points were given for the social, and 3 for educational background, and 4 for economic background. So now total value was 22 points. Okay, and caste secure although 11 criteria was given, that value was added up on to the 22 points with various issues giving multiple marks. Okay. So 11 points, but sorry, 11 variables, but 22 points. So each point 2 marks, each variable 2 marks or 2 pointer. So the caste score secure of 50%, that is 11 points or above, were listed as backward. So the caste which could get their 11 point or above backwardness on a scale, they are termed as a backward class or backward caste. So the caste as a whole found socially, educationally backward, and reservation for the entire caste can be allowed. So 1937, it based on the 1937 figure of caste determined that OBCs were 52%. So imagine 1937 census, so OBC is 52% of the population. But meanwhile, the census has been updated more or less only once, and the population might have had went above, and there has to be little changes. There have just not little, but drastic changes has to be made to the policy by doing the caste survey. Let us hope in future we might have to update this caste survey also in our lesson. So the commission repeated state-wise list of OBC comprising of 3,742 castes and communities. So with their survey, they came up with 3,742 communities and castes of OBC, other backward classes were present. Now, the committee has given the major recommendations. So, we have read about methodology. Now, let us talk about recommendations. So, now what are these recommendations? So, these recommendations are 27% for reserve to be for OBCs in central government, and 27 reservation of promotion at all levels, and carry over period of 3 for unfilled reserved quota. I hope you got it. Like if there's an reserved quota is unfilled, that must be left empty until it's been filled for a period of over 3 years. Then age relaxation of OBC should be similar to that of SC and ST. This has been not adopted. Yeah, August 1990, after it was put in a cold storage for more than 10 years, again a non-Congress government led by VP Singh, National Front government declared reservation of 27% seats in government services and educational institutions. So this in a way led to the downfall of VP Singh government. So where is Mandal Commission has been recommended 1981 something. Then it was adopted in August 1990. Imagine the 10 years it's been lying down in the cupboards, but still at what cost? The government fell down. So now 2019 EWS reservation, economically weaker section. So this has been done as a 103 Constitution Amendment Act or 124th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Okay. In 2019. So what happens here? Articles 15 and 16 of the Constitution were amended by inserting Article 15 and 6, 16 and 6. So it also got presidential assent, signature. So this literally becomes an act. So this one-third Constitution Amendment Act 2019 allows 10% reservations to job and educational institutions for economically weaker sections, EWS. So, but this 10% ceiling is independent of ceiling on existing reservations. So, this 10% shall not be taken from the reservation that has been earlier put on to the ceiling of reservation of SC, ST and OBC. So, this is a central law made on the subjects of concurrent list. So, states also must be ratifying this. Then opposition parties, they contended saying that 50% cap on reservation. This is against the 50% cap on reservation against the Indira Sane case. So 1992 Indira Sane case, what happens is the judgment puts up a case saying this reservation, this is about Tamil Nadu medical seat reservation issue. So the Supreme Court says that there has to be a blanket cap on how much of the reservations has to be made. So this blanket cap has been put to 50%. So in that 50% only, 27%, 18%, and 7% like that will be given to the OBC, SC, and ST. Then Apex Court also rejected the economic backwardness as a criteria for reservation. So, but Narasimha Rao government in 1992, because it was not provided under constitutional provision, he said that, but now Supreme Court will never create any legal objections to this reservation because Parliament has made amendments to the Constitution. So as now the government has already made or amended Constitution. Now, as per the Constitution, here Supreme Court cannot have any say in it. So it does not now come under Supreme Court authority for not upholding the constitutional rights. So Lok Sabha passed this bill in EWS with the support of 323 members, and Rajya Sabha 165 members voted. See, this 50% cap was argued by Supreme Court in Indra Sawhney case in 1998 during Narasimha Rao government because they did not have any amendment to the constitution. But this EWS, amended constitution, right? This 103, the previous slide. This 103 Constitutional Amendment Act, it amended the constitution and came up with a thing like this cap shall be removed and they shall be given a reservation. So now that the constitution itself is amended, Supreme Court cannot say anything. So now the bill has been passed by both in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha with 323 members in Lok Sabha and 165 members voting in Rajya Sabha. Now, let us talk about controversies and reservations. See, reservation is such a crucial topic and there's been controversy. So let us talk about this. State of Madras versus Champakam Durai Ranjan 1951 case. What is this about? So this is about policy of reservation of seats. Yeah, I said Indra Sawhney case was this, but yeah, Champakam Durai Ranjan case was this. I'm sorry. So this seat where the education in professional colleges was reserved way above than the cap that has been put. So this in a way does what? It violates the equality clause in the Constitution. So the first amendment of the Constitution in 1951 adding section 4 to article 15. What is the section 4? That nothing shall prevent the state from making any special provision for the advancement of any socially or educationally backward classes of citizen or scheduled tribe or scheduled caste. Okay, this was amended and Article 15.4 says state must show special priority. So special priority must be given to uh, advancement of social and educationally backward classes. So 50% limitation on reservation. Indra Sawhney versus Union of India 1992. So the Supreme Court of India put a cap on reservation in government jobs and education at 50%, ruling that no provision of reservation or preferences can be vigorously pursued as to destroy the concept of equality. Now, what happens under Article 15.4 and Article 16.4? This should not exceed the 50% cap. And the states and the union have large accepted this as a correct and it should be held as a constitutional provision. So once they not follow or cross this 50% limit, this should be viable to struck down. So this was Indra Sawhney's case, that this cap shall be 50%. If not, this becomes ultra vires. Okay, so July to 2010, it allowed all states to exceed 50% limit for reservation if can they provide enough evidence. So show me the evidence, then you can get the above 50% cap. So that is what this Indra Sawhney case of 1992 talks about. Then in 2019, the bill was introduced on EWS. So EWS, what happens is this there's been an argument that how come Supreme Court comes with this magical number of 50%? How does it knows that there has to be only 50% gap? Which makes sense because here we can talk about Supreme Court's judicial activism that has come into the play. Okay, so although there's been no changing of the law because as there's no proper law attaining or amendments attaining to certain laws in the amendments of constitution, Supreme Court has given up its judgment. So court was only based caste-based reservation of SC, ST and OBC, and 50% cap won't be available to EWS reservation. On August 2020, we are talking about this the way in which the debates went, arguments went. So 2020 August, Supreme Court has referred to a five judgment, five bench judgment court. So five bench court, five judge bench court says this is a constitutional bench. Okay. So we're filed and challenging the one-third constitution, sorry, 103 Constitution Amendment Act of, sorry, Bill of 2019. So now I was looking into this as a serious criteria or serious issue. The government requested to put up this constitutional bench of five judges. Okay. Now what happens? Reservation and poverty elevation. So cases of reservation before the EWS policy came into practice and court gave verdicts that poverty cannot be on the basis to provide reservation. So our reservation policies are a little different. So not just that your economically background or you belong to the socially background classes, although but you belong to the dominant class, this you belonging to this social economically weak background does not fetch you this concept of reservation. So poverty cannot be the sole basis for this reservation. There has to be an generation of social backwardness. So the main agenda is social backwardness that we consider as a criteria for reservation. So Article 16.4, the main purpose of reservation is to provide adequate representation of all castes and classes in government services. So Article 16.4 also calls for adequate representation of all classes. Then economic reservation introduced by Article 16.6. So this talks about basic concept of reservation does not take into consideration caste-based representation. So this reservation that we have seen is only talks about that 11-pointer criteria with 12 marks. 11 variables with 12 pointer. Okay, it takes into criteria the social, economic, and the other backgrounds, but rather it does not take into the actual caste background. So reservation is not a policy elevation scheme. So this shall not be looked as a poverty elevation scheme. This is just to provide equal platform to the socially backward classes, weaker sections to bring their upliftment. So EWS bill in 2019, Union Social Justice and Empowerment Minister Gaylord says that similar state laws for EWS were squashed by courts because there was no provision for economic reservation in the constitution before. So as now that they have made provisions to Article 16.4 or 103 Constitution Amendment Bill, this cannot be squashed by courts now. Then pro and anti-reservation arguments. So pros, cons, etc. Reservations are controversial since the introduction of reservation policy during colonial rule for political reservations. Then what are pros? So reservation are required to correct historical injustice. Yeah, that's what we've been talking about. To not a poverty elevation program, but rather to correct historical injustices that has been occurred to the downtrodden and the depressed classes. So, and the women back, scheduled tribe, scheduled caste, and the backwards. And, excuse me, cannot be divorced from social realities. So, opposition to the reservation policy in India often come with dominant myth that it dilutes the merit and reduces the efficiency. Now, what? This has been debunked by Justice Chandrachud in a recent case of Karnataka. So they upheld the constitutional support of marginalized sections to do what? Affirmate action through reservation policy. An important affirmative policy was to provide presentation and equal share to the underrepresented social categories in education and employment, and also to ensure adequate representation of backward classes, okay, in the service, and advancement of this socially excluded classes like Dalits, Adivasis, backward classes, women, then implementation of Mandal Commission to ensure that adequate representation of other backward classes will happen. Then arguments against the reservation. What happens? What happens is arguments, reservations are the biggest enemy. They say this gives no benefits to the merits. So rather, just on the base of social atrocitism or social backwardness, this cannot be a sole criteria for the foundation of the countries. So reservation in a way created a new kind of divisions and enmity among the people. So if the main concept of reservation was to look into the excuse me, historically downtrodden or the historically abused communities, but rather this has become a scene of meritocracy or rivalry between the groups and equal access to resources. But irrespective of economic progress, they still continue to remain socially disadvantaged. This is the point that you must remember. So you can question that, okay, reservation has been policy has been implementing, why, but why hasn't still the economic or the social progress of this society communities have not happened is because they have equal access to resources, but they don't have economic progress as they don't have this resources to do or to come on a scale, equal scale. So they remain socially disadvantaged. But there has to be something other than this reservation that must be used to uplift them. Next one, reservation destroys self-respect competition and is no longer on to determine the best but most backward. So this is to narrow this is to narrow political ends through invoking class loyalties and identities. Now what happens? Dominant and elite classes with backward castes has appropriated the benefits of reservation. So the most marginalized in backward classes have remained marginalized itself. Then there's a concept called creamy layer even in this backward classes. Now what happens is Tamil Nadu Backward Class Commission, which was headed by Satyanathan in 1971, he said that elimination selection are the beneficiaries of reservation. So this creamy layer is about they should be excluded from the reservation as they have been access to the their social progress have happened over a time. So this creamy layer concept has to be introduced. So 25 to 35% for SC, 16 to 18% increase to 16 to 18%, and more priority to backward classes must be given. So this is again second non-Congress government at union level led by Vishwanath Pratap Singh. He enacted 27% reservation to OBC. So this was challenged in Supreme Court through Indra Sane versus Government of India, where it put with um, 50% cap. So this is VP Singh enacted and it also led to the downfall of their government. So now what happens? Implementation of creamy layer among other backward classes. So what is this? This benefits of reservation should accrue to the OBC only after keeping out of OBC creamy layer of the list. So even if you come under this creamy layer of OBC, you shall be not considered as a for reservation under other backward classes. So government decided this criteria on the basis of report of Ramananda Prasad Committee submitted in 1993. So now this happened to a lot of tensions and etc. And especially with issues, especially with openly globalized community, there has been an issue or outcry saying that this criteria shall not be adopted. Reservation policy must not be done as per it. So now this got an issue for new demands of reservation. Now what happens here is affirmative action policies because of their historical marginalization and social exclusion. So this is the main criteria that they say that reservation must be done. So historical marginalization and social exclusion. Now what happens? Reservation policies are unpopular in middle classes, but of late, dominant classes have began to demand protection of them. So even they also wanted because they also have been socially not uplifted. That's what the EWS have come into the picture. So the reservation have come to stand on the logic of contemporary backwardness rather than the social backwardness. So these arguments now started to come on. The reservation has to be made on economic backwardness rather than the social backwardness, which was the main criteria for India to put up with a reservation policy. Now, example, Jats in Haryana, Gujar in Rajasthan, demanding for SC status, and Patidar or Patel in Gujarat, Maharashtra, Marathis, Kapu in Andhra Pradesh, Lingayats in Karnataka, they are claiming for reservation on the grounds of economic backwardness to be seen as a justiciable thing, which happened with EWS policy reservation. Then post-mandal demands for reservation are often reverberate with politics of dominant class. So there have been outcries everywhere with dominant class from every state has been doing this on what criteria that reservation policy has been implemented. Now this also led for another reservation called Muslim reservation. So Muslim reservation says this educational status of Muslim has fallen over by by huge line by in 20 years, and intergenerational mobility is now considerably worse among Muslims than SC and ST. So it calls for social, educational, and economic backwardness to be reservation kept for the Muslims also. So the progressive quotas shall be used by the government to uh, uplift the Muslim communities. So now to look into these matters, two commissions have set up. So these two commissions are socio-economic status of minorities and to recommend measures to improve conditions. So what are these two committees? Sachar Committee and Ranganath Mishra Committee. These have been specially put up to look into the socio-economic status of minorities. As World Bank has came up with the report and also an outcry for the reservation policy that has been implemented. Now these two committees, Sachar Committee and Ranganath Mishra Committee, have been set up to look into the issues for the reservation of Muslims. Now next one is Dalit Christians demand. So this National Council for Dalit Christians demanded that they should be given a scheduled caste status and argued that change of a religion does not change in caste system. This is a very debatable topic. So they have come up with, even though we have changed our religion, but does not mean that our social exclusion, excuse me, have been accepted by everybody. But we will still be we will still be socially excluded. So on this criteria, it asked Supreme Court to still consider them as a scheduled caste status. Then religion neutral reservation must be provided in educational institutions and employment. So they wanted this in spite of them changing the religion, but they would still belong to the caste that they were born in. So based on that religion neutral concept, reservation must also be applied even if they change their religion. Then it does what? Allow and extend the SC status to Dalit Christians through actions of affirmative actions like education, employment, political reservations at all levels. They wanted it from panchayat to parliament. So now comes reservation in private sectors. Now what happened? 1992 new economic policy, LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. This reduced the number of employment opportunities. With this, job opportunities also reduced for SC, ST, and OBC because the privatization and the private players coming to the picture. So the employment opportunities in public sector or the government sector have decreased. So now that reservation policy applies to only government sectors, right? And report of working group of empowering SC appointed by National Commission says that about 1 lakh plus SCs lost their job opportunities. And during the period of 1990 to 97, this is the peak LPG period. And this led to the decline of 10%. So economic policy transformation demand led for privatization, demand for reservation in private sector also. So not just the public sector that we have been considering it, they also asked the government to implement it in private sector also. So now categorization of reservation. So this reservation have been introduced in Tamil Nadu. 3% quota within SC quota is accorded to Arundhati R caste. Now this in reservation in social classes, more reservation, more division to the subcastes or subgroups. So that is what we are talking about. Um, so the Madiga MRPS, Madiga Reservation Porata Samiti. So this led for the categorization of reservations in both then Telugu state, Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So what happened is Ramachandra Raju, Justice Ramachandra Raju passed a law reorganizing 59 SCs into classification and split of 50% this quota in education institutions. So 59 SCs scheduled castes that were present, they were split around with a certain percentage of 15% among the subcastes. Then law was declared unconstitutional in 2005 Supreme Court as it did not have power to tinker with the presidential list. So president identifies the list of SCs and STs in India. So as it's a presidential order, you shall not do any changes to it. So the law was declared unconstitutional. And 2007 also, Bihar set up Mahadalit Commission to identify castes within SC. And in 2020, same 5 members of Supreme Court headed by Arun Mishra gave a verdict that state government have powers to make reservation, but also they have also power to make sub-reservations. So they can make a reservation if they think that that community or the caste must be given extra effort or extra interest, but also you can do this subcategorization, sub percentage division. So this committee gave this bench judge gave this judgment. Then women reservation. Let us talk about women reservation. So women enjoying just 33% of reservation. So if they have been oppressed since all years, so why just 33? Why can't it just be more than 50? So in 2010, what happened is UPA government, when Congress-led UPA government was in power. So 108th the constitutional amendment bill was introduced. So this is basically talks about 33, excuse me, 33% reservation to the women. So this has been passed in Rajya Sabha, but not passed in Lok Sabha. So bill got cancelled. Then reasons for increasing demands of new reservation. Why? What are the reasons that everybody now wanted this new reservations to be coming in? So because it is more of a political now, vote bank politics rather than understanding the social atrocities or social development that they have been gone through or social atrocities that they've been gone through, but rather this has become a more of a vote bank politics. Now, reservation is seen as a remedy for adverse effects. Now, what happened? Increasing percentage of employment led to protest for reservation also. So that's why we've seen some protests in Haryana, Jats, Gujarat, Gujarat, Maharashtra. So relatively better, three things have been worrying the people. Then increasing demands among upper caste also, arising fear among this lower strata because they have already been in the higher status. So what if reservation gives them more power to oppose us, to more power to suppress us. So this has been their fear. Then Women Reservation Act 2023. This is the latest act. So we know what happened in this act. So 106th Constitutional Amendment Act 2023. This did what? It reserved one third of all seats for women in Lok Sabha, state assemblies of National Capital Territory of Delhi, including those reserved for SC and ST. Then what happens? Currently, 15% of total members of total Lok Sabha are women and state legislators. So this saw an increase from 5% in earlier, I think 12th Lok Sabha, if I'm not wrong, to 15% in 17th Lok Sabha. So as it has been made an act that compulsory women shall be or women's seats shall be reserved for parliament, state assemblies, or legislate or union territory, Delhi. So this has become a norm for reserving certain seats for women. So this is to increase women participation. This is to increase women representation in the parliament so that the the issues or issues related to this criteria or the women who has been oppressed all along also would have their power played or would have opportunity to put up their issues or representing all the women, representing some women around the India or the country to put up their issues in the parliament. Yes, so this is what reservation policy. We've read a lot of things. I hope you understood what we have read. I'll go through again. Reservation policy. So reservation policy is so what happens in this reservation policy is we have read about the introduction, like on what crisis, on what criteria that India puts up this reservation policy and what is this reservation policy in US, then how it is empowered or how it is backed by government, by constitution, then to protect this SC, ST and the other weaker backward classes. Then how has been the reservation issues since the ancient India, and how the society was divided based on caste, etc. Then how how this has been showcased or portrayed even in the scriptures or even in Mahabharata or the other historical scriptures, and how the caste system plays a crucial role. I mean, how did this caste system led to the division of society or led to the atrocities that have been faced by the untouchables or the socially excluded classes. Then they come up with a concept of reservation. Then colonial India also had reservation policies. So this we can see through 1836. Then Montagu-Chelmsford Reform 1919, Franchisee Committee 1918, 1919, then Government of India Act 1919, then Government of India Act 1935, 1932 Communal Award, Ramsay McDonnell Award, Pune Pact 1932, then Gandhi and Ambedkar on caste system, then commissions for reservation, Kaka Kalelkar Commission, then Mandal Commission. Then Mandal Commission was approved or recommendations were passed by VP Singh. And they came up with a methodology. And the 1937 census was their, on that census, they came up with a caste figure. And they came up with a number 3,742. OBC state-wise, 3,742 caste and communities. Then other recommendations that it has come up with. Then EWS reservation, recent 2019, not recent, but actually recent. Yeah. 5 years is not a greater time period in politics, but a rather greater time period in general human life. So it also put up a ceiling. And it comes under concurrent list. You should remember this. It's an MCQ question. And controversies like Champakam Duraranjan case, Indra Sane case, then how these articles, Article 14, Article 15, Article 16 has been amended, or several clauses been added. Then you cannot do reservation policy on just on the notion of eliminating poverty that has been given by the Supreme Court. So this cannot be a sole criteria. Like uplifting them from poverty cannot be a sole criteria for reservation policy. Then we read about pro and anti-reservation arguments. So also Justice Chandrachud's opinions on reservation policy, affirmative actions, then arguments against reservation. So how does this create clashes? How does this create more issues among communities or divided them on the basis of reservation? Then creamy layer concept, how creamy layer shall be not considered as an other backward classes or shall not be considered for this reservation criteria. Okay. Then how protests have come up, then new demands. This is latest new demands for reservation for, like you can see, Jats, Gujars, then Marathis, Lingayats and Kapus been fighting for reservation. Then post Mandal demands for reservation. Yes. Then two commissions that have been put up for the Muslim reservation, Sachar Committee and Ranganath Mishra Committee. Please do remember. Then also the Dalit Christians wanted it to be a caste neutral or religion neutral. Sorry, yeah, religion neutral. The reservation in private sector also has been an outcry. And then Tamil Nadu, then MRPS Tamil Nadu, then Andhra Pradesh Ramachandra Raju's statement. Sorry, Justice Ramachandra Raju's law, which have been outlawed by the Supreme Court. Then women's reservation, we spoke about women bill. Then reasons why there have been reasons, unemployment and women bill. Yes, so this is what we've read on reservation policy in India. I hope everyone is clear with the topic. So I'm logging out now. See you again in tomorrow's class. We'll be talking about the other policies. So see you tomorrow with another class and another policy.